Live right now. What is up, everyone? Episode 52, the Standing A podcast. I got some of the team tonight. Got Tommy Russ Jr., Corny Tanner. Um, Michael Gomes couldn't be here. Personal family issues, obligations. Same with Alan Green. He was supposed to come tonight, but he had some obligations to take care of. But hopefully we could do it. We could do a replacement episode in the very near future. So before we get into it, Tommy, share us what you got. Your latest thing you got going on.
Oh man, latest thing I got going on. So we officially got the barbecue catering and delivery service going. So we got that filed and two things rocking with that, man. So BSHQ, you can follow it on Instagram at BSHQ underscore LLC. Uh, Hey, it's about to pop, man. So good things going there. Just move. So relocated in another area of PW and the Tyler, Pumpkin City area, basically North Fort Worth. So just looking to keep things rocking, man.
That's what's up. Um, Corny, how you been since our last session? How's day to day been from abroad?
Hey, same old, same old. Looking to be home at the beginning of August. Other than that, man, it's it's the same rudimentary routine when you're serving your country overseas, and just looking to be back home soon, and just basically looking to reconnect with all the people I love and care about, and who love me the most, to include you guys. But I just want to thank everybody for the support. This is one of the highlights of being over here, man. Is getting to reach out, reconnect with our fan base and our listeners, and chop it up and talk some shit about some boxing, man.
Right on, right on. So let's get into it. For the first segment, we're gonna get into some of the fights, the major fights that happened on week number 2 of Boxing is Back on ESPN Top Rank. Um, the major fight that came out was San Antonio's own Joshua Franco. His victory over Andrew Maloney from Australia. Maloney was the top favorite. Before the fight, he had 21 wins, 14 knockouts, undefeated, heading into Tuesday's fight as the WBA regular super flyweight champion, since Chocolatito is the main champion. Franco came in with a record of 60 wins, 8 of those by knockout, two draws and just 1 loss. It was back and forth action with Franco scoring a knockdown in the 11th. Franco would win by unanimous decision with judges' scorecards 114 to 113 on two scorecards, and the other 115 to 112. Corny, give us your general assessment of this fighter coming out of San Antonio and being the 13th fighter from the Robert Garcia camp to be out of that school, that academy.
Well, obviously, if you're a Robert Garcia trained fighter, you know off top that, you know what I'm saying, you're coming with you're coming with something special. Just in order to be able to survive in that type of gym environment and under that stable of fighters that Robert Garcia is trained. When you look at the catalog of world champions that the guy has, the fact that he's a former world champion himself, and his younger brother is one of the premier pound for pound fighters in the game right now. So if anybody who is under that banner or in that stable is got to be looked at as somebody with special ability. As far as his performance against Maloney, a very good fight, action packed. It was one of those heartfelt performances where he brought that mentality, he brought that sense of, I'm not walking out of this ring without that belt type performance, and I think that's what differentiated him down the stretch against Maloney in a very grueling and very rugged fight. As far as how I see him in the 115 picture in the long run, like I said, obviously somebody who's trained by Robert Garcia is a special talent and has got something special. But where I see him stack up, when we mentioned Roman Gonzalez, Chocolatito, we mentioned guys like in a way he's at 118 now, obviously. But we look at guys like Estrada. We look at guys like Ioka coming out of Japan, and also, man, it's early in the morning for me. The guy coming out of the Philippines at 115. But when we're looking at those guys right now and the other belt holders and the person who rightfully holds the WBA title, I think I just don't see him with staying power at 115. And when I look at all those other title holders or all the top contenders at 115, I honestly, head to head, looking at those guys, how they match up against them, I see all those guys beating them. So, ultimately, we'll tell. Time will tell. And time will tell, how he fares against those guys or how many of those matchups he's going to get or be in against those guys. But, for now, boxing is one of those things where, when
it's
you
a
look
wait
at
and see.
performance, and it's a wait and see. And right now, it's pretty much, celebrate the guy's accomplishment and his performance. Who knows? Maloney might be looking for a rematch, and the rematch might go differently.
And rightfully so.
But yeah. So, but right now, just I think it's the appropriate thing to do in this instance is just to celebrate the accomplishment, man. I'm saying, him coming out of San Antonio and him being the 13th fighter to come out of the Robert Garcia Boxing Academy. That's huge. That's a momentous accomplishment in itself.
Tommy, give us your thoughts. And also, you being from Texas, San Antonio's own Joshua Franco, we're getting a sense of these. A lot of these successes are coming from your state. Not only speak on Joshua, but how excited are you to see these boxers coming from your home state?
Well, one thing that I can say about that, all of these guys that are coming out of Texas, they make business, man. They're very hungry. They're very game fighters. All of these guys are humble. They work hard. Obviously, we see that with, Franco coming out of camp. This is something that a lot of these guys, and Robert Garcia, he makes a lot of noise in Texas as well. He's got a lot of guys that are out of his state.
Hey, Tommy. Hey, your audio is kind of unstable. Try to log back into the room, and we'll get your thoughts real quick.
All right.
But while he's doing that, I'm going to say the fighter I couldn't remember out of the Philippines is Jerwin Ancajas, who is also a top-ranked prospect, and that's a viable next fight if he does. If Maloney doesn't seek a rematch, saying for a broader unification. So that's a fight to look forward to. As far as the other title holders at 115, like I was saying earlier, and how he potentially matches up with those guys, I think with Franco and Ancajas, I think that's probably his best matchup at 115. And I think just seeing the fights that I've seen with Jerwin Ancajas and seeing this last performance from Joshua Franco, I think that's I think that's a viable matchup, and I think that's an entertaining fight on that could be potentially on the horizon for boxing fans.
Right on. We got Tommy back. Tommy?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to reiterate what you just said before you kind of breaking up in there, as far as Joshua Franco and just the whole Texas renaissance of boxing coming.
Yeah, just saying, man. There's a lot of these guys that are very hungry. They're humble. These are game fighters. A lot of them, which like we see with Franco coming out of Robert Garcia's camp. Robert Garcia has a very large presence here in Texas. He's been here several occasions, several events here in DFW. So, there's a lot of these guys that are really scratching and clawing their way. And we see that by him becoming the 13th fighter out of that camp to do this. I'm very excited to see so many coming out of Texas overall. San Antonio has a very big showing. DFW as well. But just everywhere, El Paso. I mean, there's so many different places. We got Houston, Charlo's. And there's boxers littered through the great state of Texas. And so, it's a wonderful thing to see. And I also hope that Texas becomes even bigger on the map when it comes to landing the big fights, not just the Fury World and the second tier kind of going to the San Antonio. But seeing some very, very major names continue to hit in this area.
Right on. Also, that same week, not just Joshua Franco fight, but we also saw Emmanuel Navarrete on that Thursday. It was a non-title fight, junior featherweight. There was a recent headline about the prospects of Emmanuel Navarrete versus Naoya Inoue fight. Given that they're two divisions separate, how realistic do you see that matchup coming into fruition? Do you think Emmanuel Navarrete will be willing to wait long enough to stay at his current division to allow for Inoue to fight at his division and maybe get something popping? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, on paper, it's a makeable fight because they're both aligned with Top Rank. But as far as in terms of where they're going to meet as far as rank, I think Navarrete is. I think he's done at 122, and I think his last performance or his most recent performance put that on the wall. He was already having a lot of difficulty making 122 as it is, and I don't think if he does stay at 122 for another few more fights, I don't think he's very long for that weight class. Inoue obviously has a lot more business to do at 118. He's pretty much just entered at 118 and started to make noise with the coming out of the World Boxing Super Series and unifying belts. And when you look at the potential fights that Inoue has at 118 that's on the horizon, when you look at the fact that he just got the 118, when you look at his his body frame and his body type, I think that's one of those things where Navarrete is on a different trajectory in that all indicators are that he's headed to 126, and he might not even be there at 126 for very long. Whereas far as where Inoue is, you can see him being at 118 for a while. I think Inoue will eventually go up in the weight. I think his ceiling will probably be at 126. But I think Navarrete, his ceiling with his body type and his frame is probably going to be somewhere around 135. So I think though it's a fight that on paper, when you look at the promotional entities, when you look at television, how that lines up, it's a fight that definitely can be made. I think in terms of where they would meet at, in terms of weight, I think it's just one of those things where they're headed in different directions as far as that. But I mean, it'd be a great fight. When you look at both of them skill wise. As far as Navarrete's last fight, though, I really wish they would have put him in with somebody who had a little bit more of a substantial record. I know it's with these fights, they're coming in, they're just basically trying to get fights back on TV and just kind of put together fights that are, in the arenas or in television studios or whatnot. But I think they could have done a better job as far as the matchmaking. And you also have to
think so because
that
with the pandemic going on, all these protocols. You think they could have been better with an opponent?
I mean, the thing is with this COVID thing is you got to consider the fact that makes training that much more challenging. So it's harder. It's harder to get into the gym. It's hard with social distancing and stuff like that. When you look at sparring, when you look at these guys, what they're doing for their weight and conditioning or their strength and conditioning and drum and cutting weight and coming in at a certain weight. That's hard in itself, and that presents new challenges and new ways of thinking and new ways of training and doing business when they're getting as far as preparation for these fights. So, you know, it's kind of a tall order for these guys to come in at the weights we're used to seeing them at and fighting quality opposition. You know, as we saw Shakur Stevenson, we saw him come back. His opposition was really nothing to write home about. We're seeing, with the exception of the Joshua Franco and Maloney fight, we're seeing a lot of these guys just basically in showcase fights where I think the emphasis is not necessarily on matchmaking or making a fight that's going to be a barn burner or a banger per se, but just kind of just getting these guys back in the ring, shaking off that ring rust, and getting these guys acclimated to fight at the weights. Also, I think they're fights where they're kind of testing the waters and seeing how it feels at the next weight up. I think with Shakur Stevenson, I think he wanted to go in there and see what it feels like to fight at 130. I think with Navarrete, the emphasis was to get in there at 126 and to see what that feels like, to see what it is to fight a person who's coming into that weight, with their movement, their speed, their punching power. So basically, the way I see it with these fights and these matchups and these showcase fights that are being put on now, it's kind of guys that's going in, testing the waters, and seeing the dynamics of what it's like to fight at that next weight up.
Gotcha. Tommy, what do you think? Do you think Emmanuel Navarrete will be long gone by the time Naoya Inoue reaches 122?
More than likely. I mean, I think that's a high possibility. So I mean, we'll have to see how that goes, when we get there. But in my honest opinion, I don't think we'll get there. I think that we'll end up looking for other matchups. But to speak on one of the things that Courtney was talking about, and what you guys were mentioning about just the fights right now. We got to remember that when this COVID stuff all started off, what did Bob Arum say? Like he said, he was willing to put almost any fighter, on the show. When it came down to the negotiations of the boxers wanting more upfront money because they were losing out on ticket sales, things like that, and kind of not necessarily being willing to budge on the financial portion of things. That the boxers, the promoters, everybody was losing. That could be a little bit of this as well. We could be seeing some guys, that were, already standing up right there at the door, ready to go, ready to bang, just like nothing happened. And there could be some people that, they pushed off for a week or two, or didn't respond back, or said they wanted to think about it or something. And, there's a little bit of that mixed with, lightening up the load as far as the opposition. But there could be a lot that's going down with this. With just, the way we're seeing these matchups. One thing that I am glad about is that, over the last about week or so, maybe about 2 weeks, we've been seeing some boxing getting pumped out, and I'm loving that, definitely. Fans or no fans, we saw for, a couple of months now what UFC could do, what, the wrestling WWE, what they could do, still performing with no fans. And now this is something that we're seeing, with very, very limited media and really no fans in the stands. So I'm glad to see it, man. No boxing, no life.
For sure. I'm gonna refresh my video signal. I got one last. Oh, go ahead, Corny. You got something to say?
What I want to add on to that too is also you have to look at, as far as Top Rank is the only major promotional entity that's at the forefront and taking the risk right now. And when you look at what's happened with Michaela Mayer and you look at what happened with Jamel Herring, there's also an inherent risk of giving, these guys upfront money or financing these guys going through extended training camps or whatever. And then they get to Vegas, they get into their pre-fight medical checks, and then they pop hot for the COVID. So, I mean, that's an inherent risk in itself. And we've seen that in UFC too, where they had to pretty much shake and bake or mix and match as far as matchups that were scheduled and they have to substitute opponents or take guys off or modify their cards at the last second because these guys get in, they meet with the commission doctor, they take their test, and then they find out, hey, you've got COVID and you're asymptomatic, and you obviously can't go in the ring like that. So I mean, it's just it's trying times for the world as we're dealing with this pandemic, and that translates to its trying times for boxing, and especially as boxing kind of is one of the few sports that takes that baby step or that first leap to get back on television and to basically start giving their pushing their product back out to the fans. So props to Top Rank, tops to Bob Arum for being at the forefront of making an effort to bring live sports back to the back to the public. I think this is I think this is not necessarily, I don't want to say a golden opportunity, but it's a unique opportunity for boxing in that the way it's situated and as far as how the sport is broadcast and delivered, that boxing can take steps to further entrench itself in the mainstream, in that it's one of the few sports that's on right now. So,
hey, I think Mike Tyson said he wanted to get on Top Rank, so you can get in that stable.
Tyson versus Fury, baby.
There it is.
I heard that Fury said he wasn't offered enough to even face Tyson. Any thoughts on that?
Hey, my man said he wanted $500 million. $500 million to fight Mike, man. Wow.
Hey, he said I got up from the Wilder part. I'm not trying to roll the dice.
Well, he's supposedly close to being the franchise champion in the heavyweight division, so he has a plus going there. But one last question before I head to the next main topic. I heard that the viewer ratings for the Joshua fight was on the ballpark around, I could be wrong, 350,000 viewers, and let's just say that it was that. Tommy, what do you think of those numbers? You think that's pretty impressive, given what's going on?
Definitely, man. I mean, here's the thing, man. Like during all of this COVID stuff, that's one thing that we've been able to see is that it may seem like some things have slowed down, and in a lot of cases it has. Restaurants, things like that, bars, clubs, stuff like that may have slowed down. But what secluding everybody in their homes and stuff like that is doing is turning people to the TV. It's turning people to social media. We've got verses on Instagram right now where we're seeing artists perform and entertain people, and we can sit there and watch that. There's 500,000 people watching this. Just sitting on Instagram watching two artists. So things like this is a very positive sign. I think for boxing, for one, that out of all things that everybody could be doing while they're cooped up in the house, there was a lot of people watching that match. And so I think that we'll continue to see some good things as we get back to it and appreciate what we haven't necessarily had for quite a while with missing sports and missing boxing. So I think that the numbers were good with everything going on, and I think it's a positive sign for the future as well.
Courtney, what do you think about those numbers?
Fury Wilder kicked off like right before all these restrictions and the COVID hit as pretty rampantly as it did. So I'm going to say the numbers were decent. Not stellar, especially for what was at stake. I think a lot of people were a little bit stale on pulling the trigger in terms of ordering that fight because a lot of people, like myself included, thought that was going to be a fight where Wilder was just going to go in there and finish the job from that first fight, and obviously that didn't happen. So I think a lot of people were hesitant to purchase that fight at that asking cost because they thought it was it was already a foregone conclusion that Wilder was going to get in there and do a number on him. with hindsight always being 2020, I think if people had an inkling that the fight was going to turn out like that, and when you look at Wilder's legion of haters, I think a lot more people would have bought that fight just to see Wilder get ended in that fashion. I've talked to a lot of people personally. Where I'm at, the fight aired free of charge on Forces Network. But some of the people I've spoken to in terms of who are casual or mainstream fans who didn't pull the trigger, didn't buy the pay-per-view, but then heard about the result or saw it later, was like, damn, if I knew Wilder was going to get ended like that, I would have definitely bought the fight. So I think, but I mean, as far as if we're looking at 350,000 buys on the pay-per-view for a heavyweight fight of that magnitude and of those implications, I think, I mean, the numbers were.
No, I'm talking about the viewership for Tuesday's fight for Franco.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about Wilder in
No. But it's good you mentioned that. But as far as the viewership for the ESPN telecast, it was, to my understanding, 350,000 views on it. What do you think of those numbers in general?
Oh, for that fight, 350,000. I think
on ESPN.
Okay, because I was wondering about that, but no, if it was only 350,000, I think that's. I'm not going to say it's horrible, but I mean that's really nothing to brag about.
Right.
And I think that's. I think that really is a testament, though. Both fighters they really don't have a lot of name recognition. So I mean, what I'm saying. I think you ask most casual fans or mainstream fans off the street who is Maloney or Joshua Franco. Most people aren't going to know. So I mean,
right.
in terms of it being that caliber of fight with those names on there, that's what I'm saying, that's a respectable number. But as far as a world championship fight, that's what I'm saying, on free TV per se, and there not being a lot of live sports on TV right now, not being a lot of boxing, and people are stationary at home, I think the viewership could have been it could have been better. But
sure.
Also that, I mean, when you look at viewership numbers too, you also have to look at you have to look at how those fights were marketed and the amount of marketing that was done. And that's one of those fights where with those names the amount they were paying as far as the purses for them, there were going to be no ticket sales or whatever. I think I think they marketed the fight just based off of, hey, there's boxing and it's on TV and we're here for y'all. But I mean, as far as marketing of a world championship fight, even a secondary championship like they were fighting for, they're not, obviously Top Rank is not going to go full gusto with that. So I mean, when you look at viewerships and and compare and par that with the marketing or whatever, it's pretty much you get what you paid for. You get in terms of the effort you put out in promoting and marketing the fight.
Good points on that. Next topic, trouble at Goldenboy Promotions. There seems to be some recent tension from the optics between Oscar De La Hoya and Ryan Garcia. So let me lay out the backdrop behind all this. Oscar was planning to do a July 4th card featuring Ryan Garcia. That planned event got called off because Garcia supposedly wasn't satisfied with his purse of the fight. So, as a result, Oscar De La Hoya publicly shifted his energy to the July 24th event that Vergil Ortiz Jr. is headlining. So, having said all that, Tommy, I'll go to you. What do you make all this? Who do you see as really the franchise star in the post-Canelo era? Vergil Ortiz or Ryan Garcia? Or can there be room for both still? Oh, your thoughts?
I think that for the time being, there's gonna be room for both. Because I think that you've got a tale of two different stories. You've got Ryan Garcia. He's the handsome young man. He's got that old Oscar De La Hoya swag to him. He's got
Mhm.
a very, very large social media following. That albeit a lot of them may not consist of solid boxing fans or pundits or passionate people about the sport, but he still has that following, so that's something that's huge right now. So he's got the marketability, the stardom in that way. Vergil Ortiz, he's coming into his own. He's coming into his own in a whole different way. Grinding out of here, DFW, Grand Prairie, Texas. Shout out to Grand Prairie. But he's making his way, through knocking motherfuckers out. Getting in the ring and banging. And and it's gonna be a tale of what happens with both of them. Is Ryan Garcia gonna continue to have this stardom and excite us in the ring? Is he gonna step up to some really nice challenges and perform in a great way, or are we going to see Vergil Ortiz continue to grind it out, and find his way to the top? So I think that there'll be room for both for the next couple of fights that they may have, and then they'll start to separate themselves, and we'll see what's going to be with that. But for now, there's going to be room for both. But we obviously see that the tide has turned to Vergil. So let's see what happens.
Good stuff, Tommy. Corny, what do you make of all this?
I think there's obviously room for both. When I look at where Ryan Garcia is right now, and I look at where Vergil Ortiz is right now, it kind of makes me go back. It kind of I kind of drift back to the early '90s when and look at two scenarios where Oscar De La Hoya and Tito Trinidad turned pro. I think about 2-3 years apart from each other, and then on the other end, Oscar De La Hoya and Fernando Vargas turned pro. Within the span of 4 years apart. And the thing is, with those parallels, is there was when you saw that, there was obviously room for both fighters to shine, and I think we're seeing that now because it's it's different demographics who they've captured the imagination of. As far as Ryan Garcia, Hispanic fighter, Mexican American fighter out of California, he's got that pretty much that West Coast, Hispanic, Mexican American fan base. Also very popular with the youth, very popular with ladies, very popular with people who don't even particularly watch boxing, but a lot of ladies. He's on that sex symbol / pop star kind of trajectory where a lot of people are just bought into Ryan Garcia because of just the persona, the personality, the aura. And the kid just happens to be able to fight his ass off. And that's where it was with Oscar De La Hoya back in the day. You look at Vergil Ortiz, he's kind of like just he's a boxing fan's fighter, or a fight fan's fighter, and that he goes in there and he's going to give you value for money every time with decisive and devastating performances, and that's how Tito was back in the day. That's how Fernando Vargas was back in the day. So I think obviously with them both being in the Golden Boy stable and Oscar De La Hoya being the head of that now and him having that experience with his career, I think if he plays it right, those are obviously going to be matchups on that caliber as the fights he had with Fernando Vargas and Tito Trinidad. I think I can foresee a huge fight of pay-per-view proportions at possibly, down the line at 147 between Ryan Garcia and Vergil Ortiz. And, what I'm saying? And you're going to have those different demographics of, not only fans, but regionally where, you have Hispanic, you have Hispanic fans on the West Coast in Ryan Garcia's camp, and you have Hispanic fans down in Texas and the American Southwest on Vergil Ortiz's, and when you look at those demographics, you look at the numbers there, and you look at, and I've said it time and time again, Hispanic fans drive the sport of boxing, particularly as it's viewed in America, particularly when you look at pay-per-view buys and stuff like that. So, I mean, as far if Oscar De La Hoya can keep this together and he can keep these guys on a trajectory that are on a collision course with each other, that's going to be a huge culturally significant fight down the line. I can see that being like a, like I said earlier, I can see that being on the caliber of De La Hoya, Tito Trinidad, or De La Hoya Vargas. But you go further back to that, I can also see that fight being on the caliber of a Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns. You know what I'm saying? I think the fight can be that good when you look at these guys' skill sets, and it can be that entertaining when you look at as far as what these guys bring to the table, as far as their demographics, as far as their fan bases. As far as the trouble with with Ryan Garcia and Oscar De La Hoya, I think the famous tagline for a few weeks coming off that tweet was you're supposed to be my promoter, not my hater. Saying pretty savage. But in that situation with Ryan Garcia, I think he has to understand Oscar De La Hoya has got the upper hand. Like, the thing is, personally, looking at that as a person who prides himself on being well versed as far as my understanding of the business of boxing, say outside the ring and how these fights come together and how these fights get made in these promotional alliances and these fighters' affiliations with their promoters. Like, what I don't get is, why are you acting so brazy right after you signed an extension with this guy? You know what I'm saying? Like, right. you and Oscar De La Hoya were already beefing. You re-upped on your contract, and now you're unhappy. Like, my thing is, if you were that unhappy, then you shouldn't have re-upped. You should have gone. You should have got with Al Heyman, or you should have gone over to Top Rank or whatever. I think in terms of, like I said, how it matches up with Ryan Garcia and Vergil Ortiz potentially being a big fight in the future. I'm glad that he stayed with Oscar De La Hoya, because that's going to make that fight that much easier to make on the horizon if Oscar De La Hoya can hold it together. But as far as him being at 135, I think from a business standpoint, he was kind of dumb to stay with Oscar De La Hoya. You know what I'm saying? Because if I was in Ryan Garcia's ear, or if I was on his team, I would have told him to take his ass over the Top Rank, because that's where the money's at. That's where the belts are at. That's where the fighters are at from 130 to 130, 135 right now. You know what I'm saying? I think he could have, and when you look at Top Rank's matchmaking with Brad Goodman over there, like, they are top notch nobody is developing fighters better than Top Rank. And it's been like that for quite some time. You know what I'm saying? Oscar De La Hoya and Goldenboy, he's had some good mechanisms, for a while, as far as being able to attract young talent, particularly young Hispanic talent, coming out of the amateurs and coming up. But, ever since Top Rank has cornered the game, and got the exclusivity deal with ESPN, they've been killing it. Coming out of the 2016 Olympics, and the amount of fighters they were able to sign coming off that, they've been tremendous in that point. So I think it's kind of a missed opportunity for Ryan Garcia that he's not going to get to be a part of that. But the thing is, the decision is made. It is what it is. He is where he is. Oscar De La Hoya has got him locked in to a substantial long-term contract. He needs to work that out. Like, the last thing he should be focused on is beefing with Oscar De La Hoya. He needs to do what he's got to do to make that relationship cohesive, so that what is out there for him as far as his piece of the pie at 135 and those fights that he can aspire to and he can ascend to, he needs to make that. He needs to make sure he's in a good relationship with Oscar De La Hoya and Goldenboy, so that what's out there can happen for him. But right now, as far as going at Oscar on Twitter and on social media, I really don't think that needs to be his focus, and I think that might end up being to his detriment. As far as Oscar De La Hoya, it could be to his detriment as well, because outside of Canelo, he really doesn't have many marquee fighters on Goldenboy. So that's that and Ryan Garcia, he might recognize that, but in terms of him being locked into a contract or whatever, let's look at Mikey Garcia. You know what I'm saying? And when he decided to buck the establishment and go at Bob Arum the way he did, he sat on the shelf for 2.5 years, 2.5 prime years of his career. So, I mean, I think that in itself should be a cautionary tale to these young fighters who are locked into long-term contracts and who are unhappy with their promotional entities. I think you just need only to look to Mikey Garcia and him losing 2.5 years of his career in his prime. Go back further, looking at Andre Ward when he was beefing with Dan Goosen, rest in peace. You know what I'm saying? That's another case where, you know what I'm saying, you sit and you give away large, substantial chunks of your prime out of the ring. You know what I'm saying? Both of those guys rebounded. Both of those guys came back to fight big fights, make good money, make big purses per se. But you also have to look at those dudes were already multiple time world champions when, you know what I'm saying, they basically essentially got sat on the shelf. Ryan Garcia is a promising young prospect on the come up, looking to ascend to that contender status. So, I mean, if that happened to him at this point, I think that could potentially be disastrous.
Right on. Tommy, I got a question for you. Oscar De La Hoya, he did a recent interview with the Ring TV. He stated that, Ryan Garcia, he might be the recipient of some bad advice from his camp that could have caused this impulsive decision to cancel what would have been a great July 4th weekend card for him to headline. My thoughts, I think there's some people that are not giving the best advice as of late. What are your thoughts on that, Corny? And Tommy, and Corny, you're free to add to that after Tommy. So, Tommy, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that could be very well true. Just like what we're seeing, man. I mean, like Courtney said already, Ryan, he almost feels like he has the upper hand. Now I mean, we got to just take everything into consideration here. I mean, he's a very, very young guy. He's still a kid, pretty much. Like, so there could be some things that he sees from certain perspectives, possibly the wrong way. There could be some things that he digests, and advice that he may be getting from some people in his camp, and then make him feel and think the wrong way. It may not even be that it's bad advice, but it may be some things that maybe he doesn't even hear, or he doesn't even be told or advised on in a way that it's being delivered to him, with him being as young as he is, with him being so kind of in the what what the young generation is these days. It's a little sensitive when it comes to the emotions, and he has a little bit more of an entitled feeling, as Courtney mentioned with the stable. He may feel like he's got a little bit more clout than he actually does, and I mean, it's going to come to a head very quickly, and be bad for him. So, he absolutely could and probably has gotten some bad advice a little bit, but where there's smoke, there's fire as well. And there's not too many people that are under that Goldenboy stable that are on the level of like a Canelo or Ryan Garcia. So all I know is it's a bad mixture right now, for them too, because they can absolutely capitalize on his stardom, as a young phenom. Goldenboy as a well-established promotion, Oscar De La Hoya, like all that put together. This could be like the reincarnation of Oscar De La Hoya, and they could be really banging on this, but yet they're fighting each other right now. So that's pretty sad to see, and I hope that it does get rectified in a great way for not only for them and their promotions, but for boxing as well.
Corny, your thoughts on that too?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I as far as in terms of Ryan Garcia being the recipient or being privy to some bad advice, I think that's obvious. In terms of the decision not to fight on July 4th weekend, that's huge. I've wondered for years why there aren't more July 4th weekend cards. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, we've got we've got, in America, we've got established that Cinco de Mayo and Mexican Independence Day weekends those are, there's going to be a huge fight, typically a pay-per-view caliber fight those weekends. As far as, as much young American talent that we've got, and Ryan Garcia being Hispanic and a Hispanic American or Mexican American, like that's a prime opportunity to double dip into both of those demographics. So I mean, as far as like Canelo saying that, when he said he's going to reclaim those 2 weekends for Mexican fans, with him being a Mexican fighter, because we all, for years Floyd Mayweather had that locked down. If I'm Ryan Garcia, my prerogative would be like, yo, I'm going to be the person who locks down 4th of July weekend. That's going to be my weekend. That's
you having said that. Sorry to interrupt you. Canelo could have easily taken that July 4th weekend, as you say. Have you alluded to? So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Canelo could have been greedy with that. Even if he fought on May 5th and fought a lesser caliber opponent just to make that date or whatever. And obviously he didn't fight on a Cinco de Mayo this year. But yeah, I mean that could have been easily, that date could have easily been taken by a higher profile fighter, or Top Rank could have, they could have jumped on that, because we already know Top Rank has got the volume of fighters to be able to do that. But yeah, with July 4th, I think he missed a golden, or passed up on a golden opportunity to showcase himself and to bring himself into the forefront of the mainstream. But yeah. So I mean, in terms of your question though, for him to decide that was the move he wasn't going to make because of minor differences or the difference of a few dollars with Goldenboy, I think that was obviously bad advice. And I think I think what it is at this point is Ryan Garcia seeking to make a point, or to put Oscar De La Hoya on notice, or dare I say, put Oscar De La Hoya in his place on some things. And what I think is Ryan Garcia being in his early 20s, being a prospect looking to make it into contender status, he needs to stay in a fighter's place and let Oscar De La Hoya be in a promoter's place, because Oscar De La Hoya has promoted Canelo for years, who's been in some of the biggest pay-per-view fights in in recent memory. Oscar De La Hoya himself, as a fighter, has been in some of the highest grossing pay-per-view fights in the history of the platform. So in terms of that, there's a lot of shade that gets thrown at Oscar because of his behavior as far as outside the realm of boxing or whatever. But I mean, as far as his entity, Goldenboy,
I think we've grown past that.
It's still viable as emotional entity because yeah. But I think the Goldenboy with Oscar De La Hoya has remained viable with him at the helm, because he obviously does have an inkling, to say the least, of what he's doing. And so, I mean, for Ryan Garcia to be at loggerheads with De La Hoya in this fashion, I think that's certainly unwise. And as far as him not getting in the ring on 4th of July, with in this when we're dealing with boxing being at the state that it is now, I think he threw an opportunity in the trash, and I hope he doesn't regret it later. But I mean, I certainly read it as a boxing fan, in that we're gonna miss an opportunity to see him back in the ring on a significant date. So
yeah, so hopefully this will all get resolved soon in the near future. That's gonna end it for this episode 52.
Hold on. Before we go, we're not gonna talk about Big Bang. We're not gonna talk about Big Bang.
You know what?
Are we really gonna leave that?
I was afraid to, but in the past episodes, you never wanted us to mention his name ever. So I was hesitant to put that in the agenda. So you brought him up. Let's talk about it.
My bad, Lil Similac, aka Jarrell Miller. You know what I'm saying? Hey, we cannot leave. We cannot leave without talking about it. Tommy, hey, Aaron, all due respect, I know you're hosting this episode, but hey, Tommy, hey, go ahead and let him have it, yo. Go ahead and let him have it.
Wait,
Hey,
one thing though, let me give a quick shout out to.
Go ahead and go Tupac Outlaws on that, dog.
Oh, 1 second though, let me give a quick shout out to Sean Fitzgerald from Just Boxing Live. He's been viewing this episode live, so big shout out to him. Thank you for always religiously following us. We thank you so much. But yeah, I guess Tommy, you want to get at this Similac news story? Go ahead.
Big Brokey, aka Similac, all over his back. Man, come on now. Like, what is up with this dude? You know, who was it that tweeted? Was it Carl Franco? I believe it was.
Yep.
Yeah. Savage tweet.
Yeah, he let him up. It just basically, to summarize was, can we officially ban this man for life? Like this is disgusting. You know, for one, like this dude keep popping hot PEDs, and I mean he got as soft as a cat. Like, good grief. Like, what's going on with this dude? Like, he just needs to just sit down. He's completely doing a disservice to the whole entire sport. Like, he's not right there in the name of the game of the heavyweight division right now. And this is all for nothing. And it's just a waste. It's just a stain on boxing. It's something that we do not need. We don't need that symbol at really big dopey. So we need to go on somewhere to sit his happy ass down somewhere. What's up, Courtney? What you got?
Hey, man, I'm going to put it like this. Hey, metaphorically, take this man's career out to the pasture and put a bullet in his head. It's over. It's over. Hey, save this man from himself. Save this man from himself at this point because, like, come on, man. You get popped for the same shit you got popped for previously that got you banned. Like, that just tells me he doesn't want it. You know what I'm saying? That tells me that he's got some other shit going on. He might be a PED addict at this point for all we know. You know what I'm saying? Like, this might be some shit that he just can't shake. But obviously, he needs help. He needs some professional guidance. He needs prayer if you're so religiously inclined. But what this dude doesn't need is to be a part of the sport of boxing.
No, not at all.
Because it's basically two scenarios at this point. He's either gonna keep shooting the shit up his ass and kill himself, as far, you know what I'm saying, or have a Chris Benoit moment or something where, you know what I'm saying, he snaps and does something that, you know, basically mentally damaged, or, you know, he hurt somebody else, or he hurt somebody else in the ring or whatever. But boxing, it's not the realm, it's not the place he needs to be. And as far as if this guy is allowed to continue on in the sport of boxing, not only does it put a black stain on boxing, but that basically just sends a fucked up message to the youth who are aspiring to be at this level within the sport. And it also just sends a fucked up message to fighters in general that we do not care about your well-being as human beings. When you look at the year we're coming off of, and we saw, you know, the deaths that we saw in the ring, and none of those deaths were attributed to either fighter being, you know, being on PEDs. And we're seeing the potential for the sport to be that dangerous, as far as guys dying, as far as guys getting their careers ended, guys suffering long-lasting brain injuries. When we're seeing that and PEDs weren't involved, like, we've got to be super conscious. We've got to be super conscientious of what the hell can happen when you add PEDs, or you add a fighter who is on PEDs into the equation. You know what I'm saying? Whether they do that to somebody, or their body can't respond properly because they damaged themselves by doing the PEDs. But you know what I'm saying? Either way you look at it, either scenario, the message needs to be sent that this cannot go on in the sport. It's too rampant. If he was this arrogant to get popped like this fashion at this point, he obviously did that with the confidence that he either wouldn't get caught or wouldn't get held accountable. And so if he has that attitude in doing that or perpetrating this type of behavior, that lets you know that the regulations and the regulatory mechanisms within boxing for shutting this shit down are either laxed beyond what they need to be or just non-existent. I think we need to let this be the moment where we say collectively, enough is enough. This cannot continue. We need to take action to save people's lives and to prevent people from basically hurting themselves and harming others.
And another thing with that, man, is it's a complete disservice to everybody that's clean.
Yeah.
Like let alone, the health portion of it. You've got all of these people that are maintaining the self-discipline, maintaining the integrity of the sport, the professionalism of this, or do the actual grind and do what they need to do. They're putting tears and this popping shit. Like, come on, man. Like, that is a complete slap in the face, and if he's allowed to continue, it's a horrible message to every clean fighter in the sport.
Yep, I think you two guys
earlier,
nailed it in the head. Yeah, Courtney, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, earlier, you know what I'm saying, Tommy let it off by calling this dude a big dummy, you know what I'm saying, which is completely true. But, the most insulting thing about it is, by him doing what he did, he's calling us big dummy. You know what I'm saying? He's calling the millions of fight fans out there nationwide and around the world. He's basically playing us as unintelligent people. You know what I'm saying? And it's boxing is already gets a bad rap for being a sport that's quote unquote dead on the fringes as it is. And you know what I'm saying? And then just to do that to the people all these years who have stuck and remained loyal to this great sport, this sport of kings, as I like to call it. I just think it's completely irreverent to the people who continue to try to push and evolve this sport. He's done the sport a disservice. He's done the fans a disservice. He's done the people who've been loyal to the sport a disservice. And it's time for him to go. It's not only time for him to go. It's time for people like him to go. Dillian White, he shouldn't even be in the conversation for big fights anymore. Povetkin, he shouldn't be in the conversation for big fights anymore. You know what I'm saying? And I know there's a lot of other guys who have got PED, bans or suspensions or positive tests on their record or whatever. But I'm talking about the guys who are multiple offenders. You know what I'm saying? I'm a firm believer that everybody deserves a second chance. I believe anybody can fuck up, but when we're looking at a scenario like guys like Dillian White, like guys like Povetkin, like guys like Lil Stimulac, I think you just need to look at it and you say, like, how many chances does a person need to be given to fuck up? How many chances does a person need to be given to potentially do great harm to themselves or others? And I think these guys. I mean, I'm at the point. Not only do these guys need to be banned, but I think the United States needs to take the same steps that Germany took with the. If you look at the situation with Felix Sturm over there, as far as you test positive, whatever jurisdiction you're in, you go to jail. You know what I'm saying? I think it really needs to be at that point right now. Is if you're in the United States, you're a licensed fighter, and you hit positive, and you know what I'm saying, and it's multiple times. I think legal action needs to be taken for you, and you know what I'm saying, you need to look at being locked up. I really am sincerely saying that, and I'm standing by it. If we're locking up people for a lot less, you know what I'm saying, I think people who are multiple offenders of violating PED testing procedures, they need to go to jail.
Can't say it better myself. Tommy, Courtney, another great episode, 52 in the books. Tommy, give us make another shout out to your barbecue establishment again.
Oh man, shout out to the team, BSHQ _LLC on Instagram. A lot more sites coming soon. About to get it. We're gonna have some shipping nationwide, all kind of things, man. Let's just start to go down.
For sure. We'll put more information on that stuff on the next episode as you give us more information, for sure, man. And also, shout out to Michael Gomes. Make sure to check out his Real Estate page, facebook.com/Real Estate Sold by Me. On the bottom right of the screen, if you're watching us, the information's right there. That's it, guys. Episode 52. Next weekend, next Sunday, we have another episode. Special guest. We'll disclose that soon, this upcoming week, but it's a very big show coming up, so don't miss it.
Sir.
So again, guys, Tommy, Corny, thanks for being with me. Have a good night.